The BF Bot Manager comes with 10 example strategies to demonstrate some of the ways the bot can be used to automate your betting strategies. In this video, we will look at how to create 3 more popular strategies that can be automated with the BF Bot Manager: streamers and drifters, football in-play goal markets, and horse racing in-play trading. First, let's look at streamers and drifters. By looking at the Streamers and Drifters tab, we can see at a glance the change in odds for all win and match odds markets that have been loaded by the Markets Grid view. Streamers are runners whose odds are decreasing, positive numbers. Drifters are runners whose odds are increasing, negative numbers. It is possible to create automated strategies that find and then back or lay these streamers and drifters according to your filters. If you want a strategy to lay horses whose prices have drifted by 10% or more in the 30 minutes before the off, we can do that with the BF Bot Manager. Let's try creating this strategy. A standard way to create a new strategy is to go to the Strategies tab and click Add New Strategy, name the strategy, and make notes so that you can remember what strategy you have made. This is optional but useful. Then add event filters and market filters, and then edit or add extra market conditions and selection conditions as needed by the strategy. Add a bet type, edit the stake, and add after bet rules and safety rules if required. When finished, go through the rules again to check if it all makes sense. Finally, run it in simulation mode, then real mode with small stakes, and a safety stop loss to be sure the strategy is working as intended. Let's do that now. First click Add New Strategy, name the strategy, and make notes. This strategy aims to lay horses whose lay odds have decreased by 10% or more in the 30 minutes before the race starts. Bets are placed 25 seconds before the race starts. Strategy will only lay horses with odds between 1.5 to 10. This strategy will only lay a horse once, but up to 20 horses per market. We can see that here. Max number of bets per runner 1, max number of bets per market 20. So we'll only bet on each horse once, but it could bet on up to 20 different horses in one market. If you want the strategy to only lay one horse per market, then you can change the max number of bets per market from 20 to 1. Click Save. Then you can open up this example we've created. From the Market Conditions tab, let's add a rule. First, let's add an Events filter. Add horse racing. Next, let's add a Markets filter. Add win markets. Then let's edit the time to bet. Here the default setting is 300 seconds before the off, which is about 5 minutes. We can change this if we want to another time, for example 25 seconds before the off. Click Save. Then in the selection conditions, add a bet type. Here we will add a default bet type and set it to lay. So if all the rules are satisfied, the bot will place a lay bet. Then in the selection conditions, add the rule price change streamers drifters. Select the drifter condition, only runner whose lay price goes up by 10% or 5 ticks. You can also set this to 0 if you only want it to look for the percentage rise. And conversely, you could set the percentage rise to 0 and set just a level of ticks change. Make sure Do Not Bet on Runner that satisfies this condition is not checked. This is useful if you're creating a condition that will stop a strategy betting on a runner that is a drifter, even when they satisfy other selection conditions. Also, set Use Strategy Recorded Min-Max Price Data, set this to be not checked. This means the strategy will use the data collected by the Streamers Drifters tab. Since this strategy is betting on the win markets of horse racing, it is not necessary to collect its own data. If we were betting on markets other than win or match odds, then we would check this box so that the strategy would collect its own data. Since we are using the Steamer's Drifters tab data, we should check the monitoring settings in the Tools and Settings form. Save. Tools and Settings, Monitoring Settings. If we want to judge drifters by the price change in the 30 minutes before the off, the default monitoring time may be shorter, so change the time from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. Time to start monitoring markets before start time, 30 minutes. This means data will be collected from 30 minutes before the events start. Click Save. If any changes are required to the general software settings, then it can be a good idea to add a note in the Strategy Notes section if you are planning to export it to another PC with BF Bot Manager installed, or if in case you come back to this strategy in the future and settings may have changed. Note: manual changes to software settings needed to make this strategy work. Change tools and settings, monitoring settings, time to start monitoring markets before start time to 30 minutes. Save. Next, edit the back and lay price ratio if needed. Here it is set to 15%. I'm going to leave it like this. Edit the min-max selection price if needed. Here it is set to only back selections with lay prices between 1.5 and 10. That's fine. Edit price settings if needed, and edit staking if needed. Here it is set to £2. Then, especially for new strategies, it's useful to add a safety rule, such as max profit and loss. Here, for example, we can set a max profit of 10,000 and a max loss of £50. It is also possible to set a trailing stop loss, so that if the strategy makes 100 profit and then goes into a 50 loss, it will stop placing bets after the 50 drop has occurred and not wait until the entire 100 is lost plus another 50. It is important to understand that this rule prevents new bets being placed after the maximum loss is exceeded, and that means it is possible to lose more than 50 if multiple bets lose at once. But once settled bets result in a loss of over 50, no new bets will be placed. This rule will prevent the strategy from placing new bets. When finished, go through the rules again to check if it all makes sense. Market conditions, horse racing, win markets, overrounds are OK, start placing bets 25 seconds before the off, selection conditions, default bet type of lay, drifters, bet on selections whose lay price goes up by 10% or 0 ticks. Steamer's Drifters tab prices are used to calculate price change percentage. Back and lay price ratio OK, my min-max is OK, my staking is OK, my safety rule is set. It all looks OK. Finally, run it in simulation mode. Then in real mode with small stakes and a safety stop loss to be sure that the strategy is working as intended. Next, let's make a Steamer strategy for the over 2.5 goals market in football. If, for example, you want a strategy to bet on fixtures where the odds for over 2.5 goals being scored decrease by 30% or more in the 48 hours before kickoff, then it can be done like this. First, add new strategy. Name the strategy, add some notes. This strategy aims to back football teams whose over 2.5 goals prices have decreased by 30% or more in the 48 hours before kickoff. Bets can be placed from 24 hours before the event starts right up until kickoff. Save. First, add some market conditions. Events filter, football. Next, add a market condition. Markets filter, over under 2.5 goals. Click Save. Next, edit the time to bet condition. Here it is set to bet at 300 seconds, 5 minutes before the off. Let's change this to 24 hours. Then, in the selection conditions, add the rule price change Steamer's Drifters and select the Steamer condition. Only runner whose last back price goes down by 30% or 0 ticks if I don't want to use ticks. Make sure do not bet on runner that satisfies this condition is not set, And in this case, make sure Use Strategy Recorded Min-Max Price Data. This box is checked. This means the strategy will not use the data collected by the Steamer's Drifters tab, and this strategy will collect its own data. This is necessary because the Steamer Drifter tab data is only win and match odds markets. It does not collect data on the over-under goals markets, so we need to tell the strategy to collect its own data for that. It is important to notice here that this states this is original logic that uses settings from the strategy edit form to record min-max prices. So we should quickly check that those settings suit our strategy. Click Save. Let's check here. Check the recording of data. In the Strategy Edit screen, click the Recording of Data tab and set it to the required time. Currently it's set to 30 minutes before the start of the event, but in this strategy I want it to record it from 48 hours before, 2 days before. Also in this Recording of Data area, we can edit the max backlay ratio for prices being recorded. If we want, we can change this value to 20%. This means it would not record valid prices unless the back and lay prices are closer together. Click Save. Again, it can be helpful to add notes to the strategy when settings changes have been made. Note, this strategy bets on the over-under goals market, so it must use its own recorded data. The max backlay ratio for recording prices has been set at 20%, and the recording of data has been changed to 48 hours. Make sure the required markets are auto-loaded by the software 48 hours in advance. So again, if we are creating a strategy that is looking for data this far in advance, we must make sure that our events and markets are being auto-loaded that far in advance. So you check in your auto-loading settings, is it loading 2 days in advance? And is it loading the over-under 2.5 goals market? Then in selection conditions, add a bet type. Here we add bet type by runner position. Here we want a back bet on position 2. We set it to bet on runner in position 2 because this is the over bet in the 2.5 goals market. If you're unsure of which runner position your bet is, you can always take a look in the markets and see which order they come up in. This is runner 1, unders, and this is runner 2, overs. And for all goals markets, position number 1 is under and position number 2 is over. Next, edit the min-max selection price. Here it is set to only back selections when any runner's lay price is between 1.5 and 10. We can change this to a range that we would expect valid bets to be placed at. For an over 2.5 goals market, 1.5 to 2.5 seems more sensible. And we can also change this lay price to a back price. Also, we are only betting on runner by position 2, so we can also specifically set that. Click Save. Next, edit the stake. Here it's set to 2. And again, it can be helpful to add a safety rule. Max profit and loss. Max profit 10,000, max loss 50,000. And if I want, I don't have to set a trailing stop loss. I can have an absolute stop loss. Save. When finished, go through the rules again to check if it all makes sense. Finally run in simulation mode, then real mode with small stakes and a safety stop loss to be sure the strategy is working as intended. Let's review some key points about using the steamers and drifters condition. One strategy can bet on both steamers and drifters, but it is recommended to make separate strategies for each type. The Steamer Drifter tab collects data according to the software tools and settings market monitoring settings. So if you want data collected from 2 hours before the event starts, you must change the default 10 minutes to 2 hours. The markets you want monitored must be loaded in the Markets grid view. The Steamer's Drifters tab only records win and match odds markets, but those markets must be loaded in the Markets tab. For other markets, the strategy must be set to record its own data, such as over 2.5 goals markets. A bet type must be added for the strategy to place bets. Only the price change steamer drifter rule will not tell the strategy to place bets. If you start a strategy and it does not place bets when you expect them to, there are a number of steps you can follow to try and troubleshoot the problem. First, make sure that the markets that the strategy needs are being loaded by the bot. Look in the market screen, check your auto load feature. If you're betting on football, do you have that football market being loaded? If you're betting on horse race win markets, do you have win markets being loaded? If you're betting on place markets and they are not being loaded, then the bot will not be able to bet on them. Then, check the Reports tab to see why the bot is not placing bets. Here in the Reports tab, it's the best way to find out which rule is preventing the strategy from placing bets. This can be very useful if we have one of the rules wrongly set and it keeps preventing strategies from placing any bets. If all rules pass but there is no selection at which bets can be placed, then this Reports tab will show the message "Bet on?" no selections satisfy your conditions. In this case, it means that a bet is either already placed on the desired selection or the desired selection does not satisfy all the rules. When you find the rule that is stopping the bot from placing bets, try changing the settings of the rules. For example, relaxing over round, backlay ratio, or price rules range. Also check that rules such as time to bet and bet type are correct. If the strategy is set as you want, but it's still not placing bets, then reread the strategy rules to check if they make sense. And you can also follow the bet process manually on Betfair to see if that exposes the issue. If the problem persists, contact us and we will do our best to help you. Sending the exported strategy and/or screenshots such as the markets grid page can help us find issues quicker. Next, let's look at how to make another popular strategy, betting on in-play goal markets for games that have in-play statistics that suggest an open attacking game. The objective of this strategy is to bet on at least one goal being scored in the game after the 30-minute mark, and even if some goals have already been scored, the strategy bets that at least one more goal will be scored. This can be done by creating 4 separate strategies to bet on 4 separate markets: the over-under 0.5, 1.5, 2.5 and 3.5 goals markets. First, to make the strategy for the over-under 0.5 goals market, click on Add Strategy and give it a name. For example, Inplay goals at 0 goals. Add some notes. This football goal strategy is number 1 of 4 strategies that work together. During the 20 to 30 minute period, they place bets on 1 or more goals being scored after that point. Strategy 1 of 4 bets on the over-under 0.5 goals market if no goals have been scored yet. Strategy 2 of 4 bets on the over-under 1.5 goals market if 1 goal has already been scored. Strategy 3 of 4 bets on the over-under 2.5 goals market if 2 goals have been scored. And strategy 4 of 4 bets on the over-under 3.5 goals market if 3 goals have already been scored. The strategies also check in-play statistics to make sure more than 2 shots on target and 5 shots in total have been made. This is to make sure it's an open attacking game with chances of goals. Next, add a market condition setting, events filter, football, add, save. And add a markets filter, here over under 0.5 goals, add and save. Then add a marking condition, bet when score, here select score 0-0. Add a market condition, football in-play statistics. Here allow betting when football rules are satisfied. When total shots on target is within the range of 2 to 1000, we will allow betting. Add a second incidence of this in-play statistics rule with a different rule. Here, when total shots are within a range of 5 to 1000, here we now have 2 incidents of the same condition. One focusing on shots on target, so there are 2 or more. One focusing on total shots, 5 or more. Of course, you can edit these settings to suit your own original strategy. These are just example settings and are not actual working setting. Next, delete the time to bet rule and add a market condition, match minute. Here set only bet on matches where match time is within range 20 to 30 minutes. The match minute condition replaces the time to bet rule. Next, in selection conditions, add a bet type. Add bet type by runner position. Select back, runner with runner position 2. This will make the strategy bet on the over 0.5 goals bet, since that is always the second runner in this market. Next, edit the min-max selection price. It's currently set on any runner with a lay price between 1.5 and 10, but we can change this range to what we'd expect valid bets to be placed at. For an over 0.5 goals, we would want the runner by position 2 to have a back price that is greater or equal to 1.05, and reasonably we might expect it to be up to about level 2. Edit the back and lay price ratio if needed. Edit the stake if needed. Here it's set to 2. And so this first of 4 strategies is set up. To create the second strategy in this set of 4, we can select this strategy and click on Duplicate Selected. Then we just need to edit a few parts instead of creating each new strategy from the beginning. For example, edit the name, Inplay goals at 1 goal, edit the notes, so it's number 2, edit the markets filter so that it is betting on the over-under 1.5 market and remove the over-under 0.5 market. Then edit the bet when score, remove the 0-0 and add 0-1 and 1-0. The 2 score lines where only 1 goal has been scored. We can then duplicate this again. Again, edit the name. There are 2 goals. This is number 3 in our set. Edit the markets filter. We want to add the over under 2.5 goals market and remove the over under 1.5 goals market. And we want to edit the bet when score. Remove the previous 2 score lines and then add all score lines where there have been 2 goals, 0-2, 1-1 and 2-0. We can duplicate this again for the final 4th part of our strategy set. Again, edit the strategy name. This is when there are 3 goals have been scored. This is number 4 of our sets. Again, we will edit the market conditions. Change the market filter. We want to bet on the over-under 3.5 goals market, remove the over-under 2.5 goals market, and we want to add football bet when score, remove these previous 3 scores, and add all goals score lines where 3 goals have been scored, 0-3 and 3-0, 1-2 and 2-1. Click Save. Now that we have all 4 strategies set, we can add a safety rule. Here, we could add a max profit and loss for selected strategies. Here, I can set a max profit, again, of 10,000, a maximum loss of £50, but in this case, not just of one strategy, but of this set of 4 strategies, so that if as a set of them, they make a loss of £50, all of them will pause. You can change this to different settings such as restart or stop placing bets. Here I'm going to set it to pause, save, and I'm going to add this safety rule to each of those strategies. Add, save, max 10,000, and add for this one, the last of the 4. Max profit 10,000 for these set of 4 strategies. And save. So when finished, you can go through the rules again to make sure it all makes sense. The names, the notes, the max number of bets per runner, per market, the market conditions. Again, if you're adding markets, make sure those markets are set up in your auto load feature. For example, here I do have those set up, but you should check if your bot does have those markets being auto loaded. Then when you have reviewed your settings, you can run your strategies in simulation mode. Then later on, real mode with small stakes and a safety stop loss to be sure the strategy is working as intended. Finally, let's look at how to make a strategy that bets on manually selected horses pre-off and then trades out in play if the strategy settings are met. First, add a new strategy, give it a name, add notes. This horse racing strategy backs user-selected Maya selections pre-off and then trades out in play if that horse goes below odds of 5. This is based on the idea of the user manually selecting runners they think will run a good race, but may not necessarily win. Selections will usually be of odds much higher than the 5 trade-out trigger. Click Save. First, from Market Conditions, add an Events filter, Horse Racing, then add a Markets filter, Win Markets. Then in the selection conditions, edit the back and lay price ratio. 15% might be a bit low for a horse racing market, so let's increase that to 50% or 100%. I'm going to set this one at 100%. Also, let's edit the min-max selection price. Currently it's set to any runner having a lay price between 1.5 and 10, but we don't want any bets made at under odds of 5 because any runner with odds of under 5 will trigger our strategy to trade out from that position. And if our first bet is under 5, then we'll make a loss. And I'm going to increase this to a higher number of 100. Then add a bet type. Here we're going to be betting on my selections only, and these are going to be back selections, on selections that the user makes manually from the market's grid screen. Edit the stake if needed. It's currently set to 2. Then let's add an after bet rule. Let's add hedge or close position. And here we're going to tell it that we want to hedge if our price goes below 5. So we will be betting on horses with odds above 5 before the race starts, and then if during the race that runner goes below 5, then this strategy will automatically trade out to try and lock in a profit there. It's also possible to add safety settings for this, for example, changing the back and lay ratio, the minimum maximum prices for the hedge conditions, for the hedge bet that will be placed. Also, you can add a safety rule to this. For example, pause, restart after wins and losses. And we could say we want to pause after 100 markets just to see how this strategy has been working. When finished again, you can go through the rules and check that it all makes sense. So then we can start this in simulation mode. And since this strategy is based on my selections, you do need to make your own manual selections from the market's grid screen. For example, if in this race you think, this horse is over odds of 5 and it might run a good race, like for example, or maybe I think this one might run a good race. It's odds of 18.5, that's over 5. I'm going to select that one. So now that comes up in the My Selections column. And then I might pick another race and look again for horses I think might run a good race, and then check their odds and choose them as my selections. And then this strategy will look for those, finally run it in simulation mode, and then in real mode with small stakes and a safety rule to be sure that the strategy is working as intended. Once you have created a number of strategies, a way to view strategies easier is to use the Group By column. We can add a tag to each strategy to group them. For example, horses. For the football, we can call them football. For the in-play goals, we can call them in-play goals. Then we can right-click on the Group By column header and select Group By this column. Then we just click on each group title to expand and view just those strategies. We can see a profit and loss total for each group. It's easier to sort and rank strategies from each group in this way. If you want to cancel this view, right-click any column header and select Show Group by Box, then click on the group by box and select Clear Grouping, and then it will go back to the original view. In summary, the BF Bot Manager version 3 is an extremely versatile and customizable betting bot that will allow a wide variety of strategies to be automated. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us and we will do our best to help you. Thank you.